Hello, how's it going out there? My name is Trent Bradburry. Just wanted to take a quick moment to kind of tell you about my testimony. I find it rather unique, but I guess anyone could say that about their life story. It's rather unique. As far as Christianity goes, it's a kind of a typical Midwestern Bible Belt type story. I was saved when I was 9 years old. I was on my way home from a family reunion of sorts, and I was sitting in between my grandma who was driving. I was in the middle, and then my mom, and we were in an Oldsmobile, and we were driving on home, and I was talking to my mom about salvation, and she had mentioned that the price of salvation was free, and that concept was not something I could grasp as a child, because what I had learned over the course of my life to that point was that everything came to a cost. If it was a benefit to you, then there was some type of cost that you had to pay in order to benefit from that. And so she told me it was free, and I was just kind of blown away. And I was like, so you're telling me that I can go to heaven for free? All I have to do is believe that, Jesus died on the cross. He rose again 3 days later. He's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He's the only way to heaven. And she's like, yeah, you just have to pray and believe in your heart. I was like, oh, too easy. So at 9 years old in the Oldsmobile on the way home from the family reunion, I became a Christian, and I lived a typical Midwestern Bible Belt Christian child's life. We went to church, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Went to all of the vacation Bible schools, all of the church camps. I was in the kids choir. Any play there was, I was required to be there. I mean, I wanted to be there. Anything that was going on at the church, didn't matter if it was a bake sale, garage sale, fixing the church, cleaning toilets, my family was there and we were doing it. And so felt like that was a pretty normal childhood growing up from what I hear about other Christians in the Bible Belt. Well, then you fast forward to, I'd say probably high school. That's when things started changing a little bit in my mind, because the influence of the world is so much more vast when you're in high school. When you're elementary and middle school, your parents have a pretty good way of kind of shielding you from the outside world and things of that nature. And once I hit high school, I really started seeing kind of a different world that I hadn't been exposed to as just a normal Christian kid growing up in Kansas and then Missouri and Texas. And so I started kind of branching out and doing my own things in high school, and started getting in trouble. When I moved to Texas, I started doing things like shoplifting and things of that nature, where it was just I was looking for whatever rush I could get, and I didn't really care about sharing the gospel. When growing up, I was all about telling my friends about Jesus, trying to get everyone saved, trying to bring people to church camp. And then once high school hit, I was about fulfilling desires of myself. And so I started noticing a change there. But the real change kind of happened when I joined the military. So we fast forward, I'm 18 years old. It's my 18th birthday, and I am at MEPS, which is where you sign up for the military. And I'm joining the Army at 18 years old on my 18th birthday. So I get sent to Germany. That's my first duty station. So now I'm an 18-year-old boy. I mean, you can call 18-year-olds men, but I'm an 18-year-old boy, and I'm moving out of my parents' house for the very first time. I'm moving to Europe, moving out of my parents for the very first time, and moving to Europe. And I get there, and the legal drinking age is 18 years old. And so what does everybody do in Germany and Europe? When you're in the military, you drink. And what do I want to do? I want to fit in. So I start drinking. And we consumed quite a bit of alcohol while we were there. I reckon we probably spent about $400 a weekend individually on alcohol for ourselves. And I would just get blackout drunk on the weekends and just think that was just the greatest thing, because I thought people liked me. But depression started to set in. Alcohol doesn't help with depression. And I started noticing that there was just something missing. But I didn't really care that something was missing, because I could fill it every weekend with alcohol and friends. So I didn't really start paying attention at that time. And so about 9 months later, we go to Afghanistan, kind of the same thing. I don't really care to find out what's missing. I kind of have an inkling in my brain, like, hey, I'm not really doing things like a Christian, but I'm in the Army now. I don't know if you can be a Christian in the military from what I'm seeing. And one of the things that kind of started changing my perspective was within our first few days of being in Afghanistan, we were supposed to go on this patrol to learn the new environment. So we're replacing our old team, or the team that was already there. We were their replacements. They were trying to show us all the routes. Well, we had taken the same route 3 days in a row, which anyone in the military can tell you is not a good idea. And we were about to take that route for that morning, but we had an individual show up late to work. And it moved our movement time 45 minutes later than what would have normally happened. Unfortunately, for the convoy that looked similar to ours that drove past the same route at the time we were supposed to drive past, there was an attack, and that convoy didn't make it. And so that was kind of the first thought in my mind was, this person being late, like, was that God giving me another chance? Because at that time we were supposed to be that convoy that would have ultimately been hit and, wouldn't be here talking to you right now kind of thing. So I thought about it for a while, went to church twice in Afghanistan because of it. I was there for 18 months. So that's not great odds when it comes to the amount of church I should have been going to. Went back to Germany after that 18 months in Afghanistan and ended up in Fort Riley, Kansas. And now Fort Riley is kind of where my life just changed. And so I'm at Fort Riley, Kansas, doing the same normal things. I'm meeting up with friends, going, drinking, and doing all that kind of stuff. And then I run across a friend who people get us confused. People say we look similar. My mom got us confused at one point, but that'll be a story for another time. And there was a couple times, I think twice that I can remember, that he asked me, or I mentioned God or church to him in just general passing. Now, up to this point, I hadn't gone to an actual church other than if I was visiting my mom, like on vacation, because she would make me go to church. I wasn't visiting church or anything like this, so it would have just been a very brief mention of God or church. And now the friend, one of the smartest people I know, still to this day, he could convince, he could sell ice cubes to an Eskimo kind of guy, right? And so I would tell him if we had a debate and if I were brave enough to bring up Christianity, he would tell me why Christianity was wrong based off of science, and he'd be able to prove it, or at least I felt like he was able to prove it, and be like, this is the reason why. And I would just be like, okay, well maybe my whole outlook on life has kind of been a lie. And so that went on for about a year. Nothing really came of it. Well, it came to Easter Sunday, and it was actually, I believe, the day after Easter, if I remember right. So this was Saturday night. I was playing Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, which is one of my favorite Call of Duties, side note. And I decided that I was going to continue playing Call of Duty through the night and skip Easter Sunday service. Now, if for any Christian, regardless of the phase you're in your life, and for most people who aren't Christians but consider themselves religious, there's two church services you go to every year, Christmas and Easter. Like if you're going to go to church, it's going to be on one of those two, if not both. And I skipped it to play video games. And the next day, I woke up to a text message, and the text message said something to the effect of, "Who is Jesus?" And it blew my mind away because the friend that I had talked to about church, I had never mentioned the name Jesus, because Jesus is it's a personal name. Most people in the world say God. They don't say only Jesus can judge me. They say only God can judge me, because the way we view God in America is a lot different, because it's like this hypothetical in the sky. When you talk about Jesus, you're admitting to like a personal name, a personable person. And so it's a little bit different, but it's a big difference when you're receiving a question about Jesus versus God, because that's a very intentional name to use versus an overarching God name being like a being that might be a hypothetical in the sky type thing. And so at that very, very moment, God just like grabbed my heart, and he was like, you have a friend here who is an atheist, and this man asked you about Jesus, and you've been living your life exactly how you've wanted to live it for the past many years, but still you're in a position to share my name with your atheist friend. He's like, this is your chance. You've done what you wanted to do. Now you need to start doing what I want you to do. And it just kind of tore me up, because I had like a flash of all the years before. So you're talking, this is 2012 now. I joined the Army in 2009. If you backtrack to a few years of high school, you're talking 2006. So you're talking 6 years of doing just everything that the Bible tells you not to do, everything short of hard drugs. I mean, I'm still in the military, still trying to follow rules. But if you're talking about sexual immorality, you're talking about cussing, you're talking about getting drunk, anything you can think of that is legal, I was going to try, because I'm a fan of trying everything once. And I've done all this stuff, and I have this just the dirtiest slate, and I hadn't repented of any of it. And Jesus still said, hey, this is your opportunity. I want you back. I'm not done with you yet. Saved your life in Afghanistan. I'm not done with you. Let's do this. And it just ripped my heart open. And so ended up calling my friend. We started talking about Jesus. He asked me questions that were simple to a Christian that I got wrong. He said, who is the father of Jesus? I said, well, that's David. That was easy. And he came back to me a few days later and he said, hey, the father of Jesus is Joseph, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, you told me it was David. Well, that's when I realized that I hadn't brushed up on the Bible in a while. And he's like, well, maybe we should start going to church just to start learning and start reading the Bible together. And sure enough, we found a church near where we were stationed. And we started going to church every day or every Sunday to learn more about Jesus. We were very adamant about going every Sunday because he was about to be stationed in Germany. We didn't really have much time together. And so that was kind of the anomaly in my life. So it took an atheist to bring a Christian back to Jesus. And that just kind of blew my mind that God could do something like that. Just for one, he cared about me enough to bring me back to him. But two, that he could use someone who absolutely unequivocally did not believe in him at all and could explain his existence away to someone who's going to bring me closer to Christ because of it, and also bring him to Christ because of it. So that was just kind of a mind-boggling sentiment there. So fast forwarding just a little bit, my friend got stationed in Germany. I was still in Kansas, and we had shared the word with different youth groups. We kind of went around and told them our testimony, and if God can bring us back, they can bring you back, type thing. Kind of relying on Paul's testimony. He's by far was much worse off as far as a slate than we were, because we weren't martyring Christians and whatnot. But it's just a testimony that no matter what you do, God can bring you back from it. And so they asked me to be a chaplain in Africa. So we went to Africa for 3 months, and I volunteered to be a chaplain because they weren't going to send one due to a technicality that we weren't going to be there long enough. So went to Africa, and that's really where I first started facing persecution. And now I'm not going to give out any names on here, but there were several occasions where the Christians that were there and that were openly worshiping Christ during the Wednesday services with the locals, that we would have to do things that the people who did not go to church didn't have to do. For example, if there was a cleanup duty, the Christians would get selected to go do the cleanup duty in order to be late for church versus the people who were going to go play sports. They were never made late for anything. Same with meal prep. If you were playing sports, you were allowed to get a to-go box for dinner if you were late to dinner. If you were going to church, you weren't allowed to get a to-go box. So there were a couple times that the soldiers that were under me went hungry because they were at church. I spoke a little bit too long. We get back and we were told, as the people who went to church, we couldn't get to-go boxes. But they knew that their friends who were equally, or if not more late, coming back from sports, they were able to get food set aside. And so it was just little things like that. I remember calling my mom and just kind of being really hurt about it. And instead of saying, woe is me, instead of her being like, woe is you, she's like, well, did you get stoned? Did you get thrown in prison? And I was like, no. She's like, well, you compare yourself to Paul. And she's like, he had that. She's like, those are just words. Those are just small actions. She's like, I appreciate that you're getting persecuted for Christ because Christ told you that would happen if you're following him. And it sucks. She's like, I know it hurts. I know it's not fun, but look in the grand scheme of things. You're still healthy. You're still, you have all these things going for you by serving Christ. And people like Paul, getting stoned and getting thrown in prison, you're not dealing with that kind of stuff. So just use this as something to build off of. And so we did. And there were times where we would have up to 100 people show up to our our service on Wednesdays, we would do it under a tree. We'd have logs to sit on. It was just a dirt pad that we'd sit on. But some of the greatest actions towards reverence of Christ happened when we were in Africa. In America, we're used to everything being prepared when we show up. It's almost like an entertainment act, right? We get to church and we expect the lights to be on, air conditioner to be on, or heat, depending on the weather, the seats to be aligned. All you have to do is walk in, sit down, and be entertained. Well, in Africa, we were worshiping outside. And I remember walking up early just to see, the venue for the first time. And I saw someone raking the ground, so we're talking dirt, with a branch that had leaves on it. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said that there were too many leaves and sticks in the worship area, and Christ wouldn't be satisfied with worshiping in an area that was dirty like that. Now, he wasn't considering the dirt dirty like we would in America, because that's kind of where they were living, but there were imperfections. He saw imperfections of sticks and leaves. It was something that could be corrected. And so he took the time to find a branch to sweep out all the imperfections out of the worship area. That just kind of blew me away. And then you kind of fast forward to when we were able to give them some supplies. The church back in Missouri, Seminole Baptist Temple, was where my mom goes to church at the time. And they provided money for a missionary that was in the local area to link up with me to buy supplies for the locals, along with some Bibles. And when I handed each person a Bible that wanted one, towards the end of our time in Africa, grown men bawling about getting a Bible. You can't. I mean, how many Bibles do y'all have in your house? Just think about it for a second. I know for me, I probably have like 6 or 7 Bibles. And if someone were to hand me a Bible, then my sentiment would go as far as appreciating that I was receiving a gift, but not appreciating what the gift was. And I was giving, these men were all far older than I was at the time. They were probably late 30s, early 40s, and just absolutely crying because they had the one possession they could never get their hands on where they were at in Africa. They had the one thing that just meant the world to them, because having a Bible meant you had the power. You could read about the power of Christ. You could see all that's come to fruition through the Word. And to them, that was just mind-blowing. And so it kind of hurt for 2 reasons. One, because they longed for something that they couldn't get for the longest time, and now they had it. But then on the flip side, in America, we put our Bibles on the ground. We'll be sitting in a chair and put our Bible down on the ground next to us. Someone will hand a Bible. Some people will reject it, be like, I don't need another Bible. I have a few at the house. Or having Bibles with a bunch of dust on the shelves because we don't open them. It's just a different mindset, but it's because we have easy access to Christ in America. Anywhere we go, we can look on our phone for the Bible. We can pick up a real Bible. We can go to all these different churches. But in Africa, in remote parts of Africa, like where we were at, you can't just find someone who's preaching the gospel. You can't just turn on a radio. You can't just look on a cell phone and have enough internet to look at a Bible app. Like, we're just so privileged here in America, and it just kind of opened my eyes. And so getting back from Africa, I was asked by leadership to make the soldiers that were under me, because I was an NCO at the time, hate me. They said that the soldiers liked me too much, and that I needed to go make the soldiers hate me, because soldiers were not supposed to, in their mind, soldiers were not supposed to befriend their leaders, and that the only way to gain soldiers' respect was if they feared you. I obviously disagree with that sentiment, and I enjoyed the relationship I had with the soldiers. They still respected me as a leader, and when I asked them to do something, they still did it. But it didn't require me yelling at them or causing fear. It was just pure mutual respect, me treating them more than subservient. And I really resonated with a lot of the soldiers. And so getting back from Africa, showed up in Kansas, and I was really afraid that when I came back from Africa, that I was going to relapse. Africa, there wasn't much internet and such, so I read all of the New Testament while I was in Africa over like a 2.5-3 month period. And I was afraid that I was going to relapse a little bit, coming back to the accessibility of all the sinful nature of things we can do in America. And then I decided to decided to continue my service in the military and go to Belgium. And I really had to pray about it because the last time I was in Europe would have been the farthest time I was away from Christ, easily. And I was afraid that going back to Europe, I was going to fall into the same type of environment. So I prayed about it. I had my family pray about it. I had the church I was going to pray about it. And I made sure the first thing I did when I got to Belgium was go to church. Find a good church and just stick with it. And I also made it a point to let everybody I could possibly know that I was a Christian from one way or another. And it wasn't for self-glorification. It was a checks and balance that they didn't know that they were holding on me. By everyone in work knowing that I was a Christian, people know enough about the Bible in America to feel that they know what a Christian should be and should not be doing. For example, if I tell everyone I'm a Christian and then I go to a strip club, even if everyone in that room doesn't know anything about the Bible, they probably have a good idea that as a Christian, I'm not supposed to go do something like that. So they'd be like, "You're a Christian, aren't you supposed to not do that?" So I did it as a checks and balance. That way I couldn't live a double life where I was praising God out of one side of my mouth, but doing all the things of the world at the other side of the mouth. And it really paid dividends because there were dozens of times where I wanted to just make a dirty joke or, go hang out with the boys and whatever they were doing, but knowing that I couldn't do it because I had already told them I was a Christian and I needed to stick to those roots. And so that's pretty much the gist of the testimony. I know it was a long thing, but just as a quick recap, started off as a Christian at 9 years old, lived a Christian life till high school, decided to do my own thing from high school until I met my buddy in Kansas. And then God took that atheist, changed my life. And now I'm here sitting in front of you, giving my testimony. And God has just done wondrous things in my life. And I'm just blessed to be in the position I'm in and the state, both being married, which is something I desired, and just being alive, because that's something I take for granted, even though that could have been taken from me just within a couple days of being in Afghanistan.